What you're about to read will change how you see Hollywood forever. The last person on this list will absolutely shock you, and the reason why will make you question everything you thought you knew about fame. In the glittering world of Hollywood, where cameras flash and millions watch every move, there's a dark side that rarely gets discussed until it's too late. Behind the red carpets and award shows, some of the most talented and beloved celebrities have faced battles that the public never saw coming. These aren't just stories of bad behavior or eccentric personalities. These are real accounts of people who reach breaking points that shock the world. What causes someone at the peak of their career, surrounded by wealth and adoration, to suddenly spiral? Is it the pressure, the isolation, or is there something more sinister about fame itself? As you read through these 20 stories, pay close attention to the patterns that emerge, because by the end, you'll discover something that connects them all, and it's not what you think. 1. Kanye West, from genius to controversy. Kanye West, now legally known as Ye, has been one of the most influential artists of the 21st century. His albums revolutionized hip-hop, and his influence on fashion and culture cannot be overstated. But behind the genius was a man struggling with severe mental health issues that would eventually become impossible to ignore. The first major public incident occurred in 2016 when Kanye was hospitalized after canceling the remaining dates of his St. Pablo tour. Reports suggested he was suffering from temporary psychosis due to sleep deprivation and dehydration. However, this was just the beginning of a very public battle with bipolar disorder. Kanye himself has been open about his diagnosis, even featuring it prominently on the cover of his album Ye with the words, "I hate being bipolar, it's awesome." This self-awareness, however, didn't prevent subsequent incidents. His behavior became increasingly erratic, including a bizarre meeting with President Trump in the Oval Office, claims that slavery was a choice, and various inflammatory statements on social media. What made Kanye's situation particularly tragic was watching someone so talented struggle in such a public way. His family, including then-wife Kim Kardashian, tried to help him, but the combination of fame, mental illness, and his own resistance to consistent treatment created a perfect storm. His controversial statements eventually cost him billions in endorsement deals, showing how mental health crises can have devastating real-world consequences. 2. Britney Spears, the Princess of Pop's public breakdown. Perhaps no celebrity breakdown has been more documented or scrutinized than Britney Spears' crisis in 2007. The pop princess, who had dominated the charts since her teenage years, suddenly became tabloid fodder for all the wrong reasons. It started with small signs: erratic behavior, partying with the wrong crowd, a quickie marriage, and annulment. But things escalated dramatically when Britney shaved her head at a salon in Los Angeles while paparazzi filmed. Days later, she attacked a photographer's car with an umbrella. These weren't the actions of a pop star seeking attention. These were cries for help from someone in the midst of a severe mental health crisis. The situation worsened when Britney lost custody of her children and was placed on a 5150 psychiatric hold after locking herself in a bathroom with one of her sons. This led to the establishment of a conservatorship controlled by her father, Jamie Spears, which would last for 13 years. What makes Britney's story so heartbreaking is the context. She had been working since childhood, constantly in the public eye, with every mistake and struggle broadcast to the world. The conservatorship, which was supposed to help her, became its own controversy. The Rushers Free Britney movement argued that she was being controlled and exploited, unable to make basic decisions about her own life, despite performing at a high level in Las Vegas. In 2021, Britney finally spoke in court, revealing the extent of the control over her life, including being forced to work and prevented from removing an IUD. The conservatorship was eventually terminated, but the damage from those years, both the initial breakdown and the controversial response, will likely affect her forever. 3. Amanda Bynes, child star, turned tragic figure. Amanda Bynes was America's sweetheart in the late 1990s and early 2000s. From All That to The Amanda Show to successful movies like She's the Man and Hairspray, she seemed destined for long-term success. Then suddenly, everything fell apart. In 2012, Amanda's behavior became increasingly bizarre. She was arrested for DUI and hit-and-run incidents. Her Twitter account became a source of concern as she posted strange messages, accused her father of abuse, and engaged in public feuds with other celebrities, often commenting on their physical appearances in cruel ways. One particularly disturbing incident involved Amanda starting a small fire in a stranger's driveway in Thousand Oaks, California. She was placed on a psychiatric hold and eventually her mother was granted conservatorship. Unlike Britney's situation, Amanda's conservatorship seemed more clearly necessary and was handled more quietly. Amanda has since been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and has spoken about her struggles with drug addiction, particularly with Adderall. She's also opened up about the pressure she felt as a child star and how reading negative comments about herself online contributed to her breakdown. Her story highlights the particular vulnerabilities of child actors who grow up in the entertainment industry without a normal childhood or the privacy to make mistakes away from public scrutiny. 4. Charlie Sheen, winning or losing. In 2011, Charlie Sheen became a cautionary tale and a meme simultaneously. The star of 2.5 Men, one of television's highest-paid actors, went on a very public spiral that resulted in bizarre interviews, strange catchphrases, and his eventual firing from the show. Sheen's behavior during this period was manic and grandiose. He gave rambling interviews where he claimed to have tiger blood and Adonis DNA. He talked about winning constantly, while his life was clearly falling apart. He brought 2 women he called his goddesses to live with him and streamed erratic content online. While Sheen blamed his behavior on his frustration with the show's creator Chuck Lorre, most observers recognized the signs of someone in a manic episode, likely exacerbated by drug use. Sheen had a long history of substance abuse and behavioral issues, but this period was particularly intense and public. What's interesting about Charlie's case is how much of it was enabled and even celebrated initially. His winning catchphrase became popular, and he sold out theaters for a bizarre live tour. The public treated his breakdown as entertainment rather than a medical crisis. Eventually, though, the reality became too dark to ignore, and Charlie's career never fully recovered, though he has since calmed down and spoken more openly about his past. 5. Margot Kidder, Superman's Lois Lane's real-life crisis. Margot Kidder will forever be remembered as Lois Lane in the Christopher Reeve Superman films, but her real life became a cautionary tale about mental illness in Hollywood. In 1996, Kidder went missing for several days, sparking a massive search. When she was finally found, the details were heartbreaking. Kidder was discovered in a backyard in Glendale, California, dirty, disheveled, and afraid. She had been living on the streets, convinced people were after her. Her front teeth were missing, and she appeared to be in the grip of a severe psychotic episode. Kidder was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and was open about her struggles after receiving treatment. She explained that she had experienced several manic episodes throughout her life, but this was the most severe. Financial problems and stress had triggered the episode, during which she truly believed she was being pursued by enemies. What's remarkable about Margot's story is her recovery and advocacy. She became a vocal advocate for mental health awareness and for alternative treatments. She continued acting and lived a relatively stable life until her death in 2018. Her openness about her illness helped reduce stigma at a time when mental health wasn't discussed as openly in Hollywood. 6. Kurt Cobain, When the Music Stopped. Kurt Cobain's story is one of the most tragic in rock history. The Nirvana frontman who defined a generation with grunge music was battling demons that his fame only amplified. Cobain had struggled with depression and chronic pain for years, self-medicating with heroin. In March 1994, Cobain overdosed on a combination of champagne and Rohypnol while in Rome, in what many believe was a suicide attempt rather than an accident. After returning to Seattle, he checked into rehab but left after only a few days. His wife, Courtney Love, filed a missing persons report. On April 8, 1994, Kurt Cobain was found dead in his Seattle home from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He had been dead for several days. His suicide note referenced a Neil Young lyric, "It's better to burn out than to fade away." Cobain's death highlighted the intersection of mental illness, addiction, chronic pain, and the pressures of fame. He had been uncomfortable with his celebrity status, feeling that Nirvana's success had betrayed the underground punk ethos he valued. The constant media attention, touring demands, and personal struggles became too much to bear. His death at 27 made him a member of the tragic 27 Club and robbed the world of an immense talent. 7. Robin Williams, the comedian who couldn't laugh anymore. Robin Williams brought joy to millions through his comedy and acting. From Mork and Mindy to Good Will Hunting to Mrs. Doubtfire, he was a beloved figure who seemed to radiate happiness. That's what made his suicide in 2014 so shocking and devastating. Williams had been open about his struggles with depression and addiction throughout his life. He had been sober for years but relapsed in 2006. By 2014, those close to him noticed changes. He was more anxious, paranoid, and struggling with memory issues. After his death, an autopsy revealed that Williams had been suffering from Lewy body dementia, a progressive disease that causes a decline in mental abilities and can create visual hallucinations, delusions, and severe anxiety. His widow later described how Robin was losing his mind in his final months and how terrified he was by what was happening to him. The combination of this undiagnosed neurological condition and his pre-existing depression created an unbearable situation. Williams's death was a reminder that even the funniest, most seemingly joyful people can be suffering in ways invisible to others. It also highlighted how neurological conditions can intersect with mental health in tragic ways. 8. Sinéad O'Connor. Nothing compared to her pain. Sinéad O'Connor was never afraid of controversy, from her famous protest against the Catholic Church by tearing up a picture of the Pope on Saturday Night Live to her outspoken political views. But behind the rebellious artist was someone struggling with severe mental illness. O'Connor was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and later with complex PTSD stemming from childhood abuse. She attempted suicide multiple times and was hospitalized frequently. Her struggles were made worse by public criticism and the isolation that came from being a controversial figure. In various interviews, O'Connor described hearing voices, experiencing severe mood swings, and struggling with the effects of her medication. She was remarkably candid about her mental health, perhaps too candid for an industry and public that wasn't ready for such honesty. Tragically, O'Connor's son Sheen died by suicide in 2022, after which her own mental health deteriorated further. She died in July 2023 at age 56. Throughout her life, O'Connor was both a fierce advocate for herself and others with mental illness, while also being a victim of the stigma and lack of adequate treatment for those conditions. Her voice was silenced far too soon. 9. Demi Lovato. A modern tale of recovery and relapse. Demi Lovato has become one of the most vocal advocates for mental health and addiction awareness among young celebrities. But that advocacy was born from personal struggle. Lovato has been open about being diagnosed with bipolar disorder, having eating disorders, and battling addiction. In 2010, at just 18 years old, Lovato entered treatment for the first time after punching a backup dancer on a plane. This was a wake-up call that led to her initial diagnoses and treatment. She became an outspoken advocate, releasing documentaries about her struggles and seeming to be on a positive path. However, in July 2018, Lovato suffered a near-fatal overdose. She was found unconscious in her home and survived only because of the quick administration of Narcan, a drug that reverses opioid overdoses. The overdose left her with brain damage affecting her vision and led to 3 strokes and a heart attack. What makes Demi's story important is its ongoing nature. She has continued to be honest about her struggles, including admitting that she's not entirely sober and follows a California sober approach, avoiding hard drugs but not marijuana or alcohol, though she's been criticized by some in the recovery community for this stance. Her journey shows that recovery isn't always linear and that mental health struggles can be lifelong battles. 10. Catherine Zeta-Jones. Breaking the silence. Catherine Zeta-Jones brought elegance and glamour to Hollywood through films like Chicago and Ocean's 12. In 2011, she revealed something that shocked many fans. She had been secretly seeking treatment for bipolar II disorder, Bipolar 2 is characterized by depressive episodes and hypomania, less severe than full mania. Zeta-Jones sought treatment after the stress of her husband Michael Douglas's battle with throat cancer triggered an episode. She checked herself into a treatment facility for a 5-day stay. What was remarkable about Zeta-Jones's revelation was how calmly and matter-of-factly she discussed it. She said she was not ashamed and wanted to be open about her condition to help reduce stigma. Her publicist released a statement saying she had proactively checked into the facility. Zeta-Jones represents a different type of story on this list, one where a celebrity caught their mental health issue early, sought treatment before a complete breakdown, and managed their condition successfully. She's continued to work steadily and maintain her personal life. Her openness helped normalize seeking help for mental health issues, particularly among a generation that wasn't used to celebrities discussing such matters publicly. 11. Dave Chappelle. Walking away from $50 million in 2005, Dave Chappelle was at the absolute peak of his career. Chappelle's show was one of the most popular programs on television, and he had just signed a $50 million contract with Comedy Central. Then he disappeared. Chappelle went to South Africa without telling anyone, leaving the third season of his show unfinished. The media speculation was immediate and intense. Was he on drugs? Had he had a mental breakdown? The rumors ranged from crack addiction to him being institutionalized. When Chappelle finally spoke about what happened, his explanation was more nuanced. He described feeling that the show had gotten away from what he intended, that sketches were being laughed at in ways that made him uncomfortable, and that the pressure and environment were affecting his mental health and spirit. He said he wasn't crazy, but that Hollywood can drive people crazy. Chappelle's decision to walk away was seen by some as a mental breakdown, but he described it as the opposite, a rational decision to protect his mental health before it became a crisis. He took years away from the spotlight, eventually returning to stand-up comedy on his own terms. His story raises interesting questions about whether stepping back to protect your mental health is itself a breakdown, or rather an act of self-preservation that prevents one. 12. Shia LaBeouf. From Disney to disturbing. Shia LaBeouf went from being a Disney Channel star to a blockbuster action hero in the Transformers franchise. But as he transitioned into adulthood, his behavior became increasingly erratic and concerning. LaBeouf's public incidents are numerous, getting arrested multiple times, starting fights, bizarre performance art pieces, like wearing a paper bag over his head that said, "I am not famous anymore" to a premiere, and a strange project where he sat in a theater and invited people to watch all his movies with him while they could watch him watching. In a 2020 interview, LaBeouf revealed he had been diagnosed with PTSD. He described a childhood full of trauma, with an alcoholic father and a financially unstable home. He talked about using his pain as fuel for his performances, but acknowledged it wasn't sustainable or healthy. LaBeouf's story was further complicated by allegations from his ex-girlfriend FKA Twigs, who sued him for sexual battery, assault, and infliction of emotional distress. LaBeouf acknowledged being abusive and entered treatment for his issues. His case shows how untreated trauma and mental health issues can lead to a person becoming harmful to others, not just themselves, creating cycles of pain and damage. 13. Lindsay Lohan, the price of child stardom. Lindsay Lohan was once considered the next big thing in Hollywood. Her performances in The Parent Trap, Freaky Friday, and Mean Girls showed genuine talent and star power. But her personal life spiraled in a very public way throughout the 2000s and early 2010s. Lohan's struggles included multiple DUIs, arrests, court appearances, and stints in rehab. At one point, she was in and out of court so frequently that her appearances became routine news. She violated probation multiple times and served short jail sentences. Her behavior was erratic, and her career suffered tremendously. Behind the legal troubles and substance abuse were deeper issues. Lohan has spoken about having an unstable family life, with parents who fought publicly and seemed to exploit her fame. She dealt with eating disorders, anxiety, and the pressure of growing up in the spotlight. The constant paparazzi attention meant that every mistake was magnified and documented. What's interesting about Lindsay's story is the trajectory. After hitting rock bottom, she gradually found more stability by moving away from Los Angeles and Hollywood. She lived in Dubai for several years and slowly worked on rebuilding her life away from the toxic environment that had contributed to her breakdown. While her career never fully recovered to its early promise, she represents the possibility of finding some peace after years of chaos. 14. Martin Lawrence, when comedy turned dark. In 1996, Martin Lawrence was one of the biggest stars in comedy. His sitcom, Martin, was hugely popular, and he was transitioning into film successfully. Then came a terrifying incident that shocked Hollywood. Lawrence was found running down the middle of a street in Los Angeles, wearing heavy clothing despite the heat, waving a gun and shouting incoherently. Police had to tackle him to subdue him. He was suffering from exhaustion and dehydration to the point of hallucinating and was hospitalized. This wasn't Lawrence's only incident. Earlier that year, he had been hospitalized after collapsing from heat exhaustion while jogging in 100-degree weather, wearing multiple layers of clothing, apparently trying to lose weight for a movie role. Friends and colleagues described him as working himself to exhaustion, taking on too many projects simultaneously. Lawrence has been relatively quiet about what specifically triggered his breakdown, but it appears to have been a combination of extreme work stress, possible mental health issues, and unhealthy behaviors. He made a recovery and continued his career, though the incident remains one of the more frightening examples of celebrity breakdown. It highlighted how the pressure to maintain a career can lead to self-destructive behaviors and how close many celebrities come to complete collapse.